A few years ago, I was crying by myself in my one-bedroom apartment. I was overworked, I was burnt out, I was $20,000 in debt, I was a college dropout. It basically felt like things could not get worse. And then I made a pivotal decision in my life that caused me to start making 6 figures online that same year. And now I run a multi-million-dollar business. So I'm gonna tell you how I got here because there are a lot of valuable lessons for you in this. Hello, I'm Jessica. If you're here watching this, you probably follow me on social media, or maybe this video popped up on your YouTube feed. Either way, I am really excited that you're here. If you are here, you probably want to learn more about starting an online business, and I'm really excited to talk about this story in a longer format because I think that whenever we think about the character arc of someone going from college dropout to becoming this really successful entrepreneur, that isn't an uncommon trope. It's kind of now like a joke where it's like, oh, your friends that got C in all of their classes and dropped out of college are like on a private jet right now or whatever. I think there's something to be said about that concept. I do know a lot of really successful people that either dropped out of high school, dropped out of college, or just in general had a really difficult time accepting the fact that they would potentially be going on this just traditional career path where you go to school and then you go to more school and then you graduate and then you get an internship and then you get a 9-to-5 and you climb the corporate ladder for decades, and then finally you're able to actually enjoy and live your life once you retire. A lot of people don't resonate with that, and it feels like you're actively working against what you're supposed to be doing when you are trying to live that life that you're told you're supposed to be okay with. A lot of people that I know who are making 6 figures, 7 figures, multiple 7 figures were in that scenario. So if you have that feeling in your gut, just know that that is for a reason. There are plenty of people in the world who are perfectly happy with their 9-to-5 and do not have this feeling gnawing away at them every day that they are meant for something more. That was a feeling that I had. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what the more was, but I had this unshakable feeling that I was not on the right path, that the path that I was on was very temporary and that it was not supposed to be my purpose in life. All of that led me to where I am now. So I'm going to take you all the way back to the beginning. I'm not going to throw this back too far, but just to give you the Cliff Notes version of this, I had a very difficult home life whenever I was growing up. My parents separated when I was 11. I actually ended up moving out of my parents' house when I was 15. I was homeschooled and I did middle and high school online. And whenever I moved out at 15, I was about to turn 16. So as soon as I turned 16, I entered the workforce. And I do have that typical story. I feel like every single entrepreneur really leans into this, where it's like, I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur from a young age. I did sell keychains when I was a kid. I did go door to door selling keychains that I made, if anyone remembers those plastic, it was long pieces of plastic that were moldable that you would fold and make all these patterns and it would turn into a keychain. Whatever, that's not the point. I did go door to door selling those. So I guess you could say I had the spirit of an entrepreneur in me, but I did not grow up knowing that I was going to do that. My parents actually had a business. They had a brick and mortar business, but it honestly wasn't really much of a discussion what my future was going to look like. I didn't know if I was going to go to college. I didn't know if I was going to start a business. There were a lot of other things going on that took precedence over that. And so my attention was very focused on those things versus on my future career path. So once I was 16, I got my first job at Plato's Closet. And from 16 to 19, I did a bunch of random jobs. I worked at a coffee shop. I did dog walking. And at 19, I ended up moving to another state and I got a job as a chiropractic assistant. During this time, like I said, I really growing up didn't know what my career path was going to be. So by the time that I was 19, I was feeling the stress that a lot of us do, where it was like, okay, I am at the age where people would be going to college and I don't really know what my future looks like. I don't know what path I'm supposed to be on. Every single year, I just increasingly got this feeling of I am getting behind in life. I am supposed to be farther than where I'm at right now, and my time to actually figure out what I'm gonna do is running out. So when I got this job as a chiropractic assistant, I worked that job for a while, and then I ended up going to college at the same time for nursing. There was a few reasons I should say, why I did this. One of those being that I had worked in the medical field. I had experience with it. I was a chiropractic assistant. My parents' store that they had growing up, their business was focused on like herbs, vitamin, natural healing. And I was pretty good at what I did as a chiropractic assistant. So it kind of just made sense for me to go into the medical field. And I viewed nursing as a stable career path. You know, I was not a fan of the fact that I would be tied to one place, that I would be working 12-hour shifts, etc. But I was like, there's always going to be a need for nurses, and from what I know, they make pretty decent money. Now, my view on that has shifted. I'm like, they actually don't make that great of money for what they're doing. You have so much more possibility to make more money online, but at that time, I did think that they made really good money. I went to nursing school and was working full-time at the same time. So I was working 50 to 55 hours a week at my office job. I was going to school for 2 years for nursing. I was also running a vintage resale clothing business on Instagram on the side for extra cash. So I was very overloaded at this time, very overworked and very burnt out. At the time that I was, kind of at the tail end of when I was in nursing school and I was doing all of these things at once, I was living by myself and I was paying all of my own bills. I had been paying my own bills since I was a teenager, and I could feel the pressure looming on me. I could feel the pressure of, okay, I have got to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. And I remember feeling so frustrated because it was like, I am working myself to death, working such long hours, working overtime, selling these clothes, reselling these clothes on the side to bring in extra cash. Yet I still am living paycheck to paycheck. I am at $20,000 in debt. And for all intents and purposes, I am still broke at the end of the day. And I think that's one of the things that gets me, that so many of you probably resonate with, is that feeling of, I feel like I'm doing everything that I can, everything that I'm supposed to be doing to be a successful person and to be on the correct path, the right trajectory in life, yet day to day, I am still struggling and I feel like I cannot get ahead. So I was in nursing school and it got to a point where I was having a lot that was happening in my personal life. And I was like, okay, you know what? It was time for me to start a new year in college and apply for the specific nursing program I was going to be in. And I was like, I think I need to just take a pause on this. When I think back, that's really what it was a pause. I was kind of putting a bookmark in my college journey because I wasn't opposed to the idea of going to college and completing what I had started, but there was a lot happening. So I was like, I'll just take a break from this and then I'll pick it back up when it seems more reasonable to do so. I was also paying out-of-state tuition at the time. In fall of 2019, I ended up getting closer to a friend that I had made, and she was a virtual assistant. And I had never heard of this before. I had no idea what a virtual assistant was. But when I was in my office job, I would be sitting there between patients, Googling work from home jobs. I would be trying to figure out what I could possibly do that would allow me the freedom that I wanted. Because I dropped out of college and really reflected on it, I realized that my ultimate goal, because I am someone who grew up watching YouTubers, I watch people going to VidCon and IMATs and all of these really amazing things. And my goal was to have a career where I made my own schedule. I was my own boss. I could travel whenever I wanted. I could live this work while I'm traveling lifestyle. I could make decent money while I was doing it. But in my head, I was like, the only way for me to possibly make that happen is to become a really popular YouTuber, which felt very out of reach, or to maybe get a work from home job, a remote job, and then use that to grow into something else. So those seemed like those were the two lanes that I had to go down. And so when I met this friend and realized that she was a virtual assistant, it's like the biggest light bulb moment I had ever had in my life. I remember sitting there and being like, oh my God, this sounds like exactly what I want to do. And this friend is younger than me. And at that time, the amount of money that she was making, I was like, if I was making that amount of money, I would have no problems in life. Everything would be perfectly fine for me. I think I was taking home at the end of the day around $2,200 to $2,400 from working 50 to 55 hours a week at this office job. And she was making 4 times that. And I was like, that is actually crazy to me. I can't believe that's a reality for for people. She was a high school dropout. She wasn't even a college dropout. She was a high school dropout. So I was like, okay, if this is possible for her, it's got to be possible for me. So I spent the next 6 to 7 months obsessively researching this. And now, instead of Googling work from home jobs in between patients, I was starting Google documents and reading blogs about being a virtual assistant and looking up all of these skills. And I would look at all of these virtual assistants on Instagram and just online business owners in general. And I would like sneak into the x-ray room at the office and I would DM one of these virtual assistants and be like, oh my gosh, is this legitimate? Like, how did you actually get started? It was just like, I was stuck in my current reality of being in this office job, but my mind was somewhere else. I was so excited at the possibility of this being possible for me that it was all that I could think about. I wake up thinking about it. In the evening, when I would get home from work, I would sit there on my couch, do more research, look at more people on Instagram, etc. So I tried to DIY this for those 6 to 7 months, and I ended up at the beginning of 2020 signing up for a course to teach me everything about how to start this business, because I was getting to the point where I was very sick of me making excuses for why I couldn't start. And I am a very impatient person, and I am someone who really craves accountability. If I have someone who's telling me the roadmap of how I can make something happen, I am so much more likely to actually do it. And I was trying to DIY this because I didn't want to spend money on paying someone else to teach me how to do it. At the end of the day, in hindsight, I look back at those 6 to 7 months and I'm like, man, I lost out on so much money because I was trying to DIY it myself instead of investing in, a course, someone more experienced who has accomplished this successfully, and then being able to immediately see the return on that investment. So I signed up for this course. I started posting on Instagram. I started a brand new account, a brand new business Instagram. I was so terrified to start this Instagram account. I was afraid that my friends and family were gonna see it. I was not somebody who showed up on social media very often. I had a private Instagram account that I rarely posted on. I used Snapchat at that time, and that was pretty much the extent of my social media usage. And at that time, truly the most unthinkable thing to me at that time would have been showing up on my Instagram stories talking to the camera. That felt absolutely mortifying. That felt like worst case scenario to me. So I had a lot of mindset issues to work through. And I think that that's another belief that we often have, is that these people who we see that have these crazy success stories are just naturally born with it. Like, they are natural entrepreneurs. They're naturally very outgoing. And I would say that I am outgoing with my friends and the people that I know. I would say that I am confident around new people. But at that time, I definitely was nowhere near as confident as I am now. And I was not comfortable marketing myself, showing up on social media. All of that was very, very intimidating to me, even though I felt like I had the capabilities to be able to do it. I'm gonna give you a quick overview of the timeline that happened once I started posting on my business Instagram, because from that March to the next 6 months onward, it truly felt like I was living in a time tornado. How quickly things were happening opened my eyes to the possibilities, the potential that there is to change your life as fast as you want. I had been so stuck in this almost victim mentality of, this is why I can't do this thing, or anything I try to do is going to take so long to build up that it becomes discouraging to me to even try. And once I started acting in alignment with what I wanted, I was absolutely floored with how quickly things evolved from there. So I started posting on this business Instagram, and I was marketing myself as a virtual assistant. If you're not familiar with what a virtual assistant is, it's basically like an elevated freelancer. You are typically working for online business owners. You can also, work with people who own businesses in person, but you are basically a catch-all for all of the tasks that they need help with. So this is typically the first team hire that someone makes who is an online business owner that is starting to grow and things are starting to pick up, or maybe they're a little bit further along and they've shifted their team members around and they need someone providing extra support within their business online, and so they'll hire a virtual assistant. So to give you some context, I had no experience with this. I did not know what I was doing. I was flying by the seat of my pants trying to make this work. And what I learned in hindsight is that so many of the skills that I had collected through life and jobs, and the job I was in when I started this business and going to college college, etc. All of those skills were transferable into the online space. Those were, a lot of the soft skills that I had, but I had no experience in any online business situation. I had no experience with any of the platforms that these business owners were using. I had no experience with most of the services that I was offering to them, but what I did have was a figure it out attitude and a work ethic that I thought was pretty competitive. So I was like, I'm gonna make this work. I'm gonna give myself no option but to make this work. So overview of the timeline. I started posting on my business Instagram, marketing myself as a virtual assistant in March of 2020. My first client ended up reaching out to me about 3 weeks after I made my first post on Instagram, and she needed help with engagement and managing her clients. She was a fitness coach. And from there, things just started domino affecting so hard. I don't think that's a phrase, but it is now. So within 6 weeks of starting this, of making my first post on my business Instagram, I had replaced my 9-to-5 income. Within around 2 months, I had quit that job. Within around 3 months, I was completely booked out with clients. And at 4 months, I was charging $60 an hour. I was making almost $10,000 a month from this virtual assistant business. If we move a little bit forward in the timeline to 6 months from when I first started posting on my business Instagram, I paid off my $20,000 of debt that had been a weight on my shoulder for years. I paid that off at one time. And I remember that being like the, oh my God, I have made it moment. $20,000 of debt is subjective. To some of you that may feel like not that much because you might have student loans. To me, that was like earth shattering. It was a constant elephant on my chest of, I have this debt. I can't believe that I got into this debt at 23 years old. I've been trying to pay off this debt for years and the interest is killing me. I was making like $800 to $900 of credit card payments every single month, yet I could not get ahead because my interest rates were so high. So this was truly a situation where I was like, it's gonna take me years and years of work to be able to possibly pay this off. And being able to pay that amount off in full 6 months after starting this virtual assistant business with no experience as a college degree was this moment of, I can't believe it was this easy. And when I say easy, I don't mean that it wasn't hard work. I worked incredibly hard to, market myself online and to do the best that I possibly could for these clients who were hiring me and to keep the momentum going and to keep growing. And I was working a lot of hours. When I say it was easy, I say that because it didn't feel like work. Like obviously it's work, but it felt so fun. The fact that I was making money online, the fact that I was starting to see glimpses of this life that I had wanted for so long becoming a reality because of myself. The work when I was working late nights or when I was working on the weekends, I was like, I want to do this more because every time I put effort into this, building this online business more, I see the results of it. Whereas I felt like every time I put more effort into the jobs I had had previously, I just got more work put on me or a $1 raise. And it's like, okay, thanks. Yeah, that helps me so much. Okay, it's warming up outside. The sweater had to come off. I feel like a lot of you at this point, especially if you're new to this concept of a virtual assistant, are probably wondering about the logistics of it. So I'll kind of give you a breakdown in terms of what I was making, so how much money I was making, and also how much I was working and what types of tasks that I was doing. And this could be its own video in itself where I could break this down way further. But whenever I started as a virtual assistant, I was charging $30 an hour. That's a pretty typical starting rate, which I know sounds like a crazy concept because to me, I was like, people don't make $30 an hour unless they have a college degree or unless they are like, I don't know, Grant Cardone or something like that. Like that was not a concept where I was like, oh, I can just start my business and charge $30 an hour and people will pay me for it. That's crazy. There's an entire list of reasons for why business owners online are willing to pay you this amount that I can go through. But when I started, I was making $30 an hour. After 4 months, I was at $60 an hour. And that was for a few different reasons why I was able to jump from 30 to 60. And that was not a one-time jump. That was incremental price increases over time. But I was able to increase my rates in that way because I had gained a ton of experience. And also I had gained a ton of demand because of marketing myself on Instagram and also referrals that clients were giving to me. When I was booked out, I had a wait list of people wanting to work with me. So at a certain point, those two factors combined, experience and demand, allowed me to get to the point where I was at $60 an hour. So at this time where I was making $9,000 a month, I say almost $10,000 because I did dip into the $10,000 range because I was working with a set group of clients every single month who were paying me for hourly packages. So most of my clients were on 5 or 10-hour packages. So I would work 5 hours a week for that specific client. Some of them were on 3-hour packages, some of them were on 15-hour packages. And so I was working with that set group of clients. And then I was also at this point, months in, offering strategy calls to clients who didn't necessarily have the ability to work with me on a monthly basis, but needed help with something like email marketing or a very specific thing in their service. So I was doing paid 1-hour-long strategy calls, and that put me over the $10,000 a month mark. But I typically say $9,000 a month because that's what I had coming in and secured monthly ongoing client income. When I was making $9,000 to $10,000 a month, I had around 36 hours of client work itself. So I had 36 hours a week booked from clients that I was working for them in their business. Now that sounds amazing. Like, it was amazing. I was making over 4 times what I was making in my office job while working 20 less hours a week. But also you have to account for the fact that I was working on my own business as well. So I was definitely working more hours than that week to week. But again, it didn't feel like work because I loved what I was doing so much. I was like, okay, I'm working on my own business, but I'm able to do that in the format of these tasks that I find fun and making content for social media. It's like that did not really feel like work. It all felt very, very exciting to me. Now, what was I actually doing for these clients? Again, I want you to take everything that I'm about to say with the caveat that I had no experience in any of these tasks previously, and I learned everything as I went. I would Google and YouTube things. We didn't have ChatGPT at that time, so it's even easier to pick up these skills quickly now, but I would just troubleshoot things. If I had something come up that was a specific task that I was struggling to get through or I didn't know how to do it, I would just learn it as I went. So I was a virtual assistant for wedding creatives, meaning most of my clients were either photographers or videographers or event planners, wedding planners, florists. I had one client who was a brand designer. My clients weren't all wedding creatives. Sometimes they deviated from that if they found my account or if they were a referral, but most of them were wedding creatives. So what types of tasks was I doing for them? I was doing some calendar management, some admin tasks. I was doing email marketing for these clients. I was doing Pinterest marketing for them. So I was managing their Pinterest account and marketing their business for them on Pinterest. I helped a few of my clients with their blog. I helped a lot of my clients launch products. So for example, one of my clients was an event planner and she wanted to do an online workshop to teach wedding photographers and event planners how to work together more cohesively in order to grow their business. And so I helped her set that up. It was a paid class and I helped with all the operations of that. I was doing some client management. For example, one of my clients was a brand designer, and so she obviously had clients that she was working with, and I was the point of contact for them. I was the one who was fielding the emails, going back and forth with these clients, getting them onboarded, making sure they filled out their forms, that they gave revisions, that they had their deliverables, that they were offboarded. So it was a very, very, very wide variety of tasks that I was doing. Basically, anytime my client came to me and was like, hey, can you do this? I was like, yep, you got it, no problem at all. And then I would frantically Google and like try to troubleshoot this and figure it out. And it always worked. Don't underestimate your ability to learn things quickly. You have just been conditioned to operate on the traditional school system and the traditional corporate systems timeline, which is years and years and years and years and years long. Whereas in the online space, you can grow so much faster. It feels like a different timeline, and it also feels like a different economy as well. So let's just do some math really quickly, because I'm not gonna look up the exact number right now because I don't feel like it and my camera's blocking my computer. But I've looked this up many, many times before, and nurses, I believe, in my state typically make around like $60 to $70,000 as an entry, what's it called? Salary. I forget what those things are called because I'm not in the traditional workforce anymore. Let's just be generous and say that it's $70,000 a year. If we break that down, that is $58.33 that they're making a month. So to put this in perspective, after 4 months of becoming a virtual assistant, I was making $9,000 a month. That's $108,000 a year. And that's not even accounting for growth because my income only went up from that $9,000 a month. It never went down from $9,000 a month. But if we're just assuming that I would have just stayed right at that $9,000 mark, I would have been making $108,000 a year as a virtual assistant 4 months into starting versus making $70,000 a year as a nurse who went through all of this schooling. I also would have been a nurse during COVID, which would have been very intense. But I want to put this in perspective for you because I adopted the same mentality of if you want to be really successful, you either have to be a lucky entrepreneur or you have to be a very well-educated individual who has a college degree. And that could not be farther from the truth. And what I want you to take away from this video, because we're going to go so much deeper into all of these topics, but what I want you to take away from this video is that when you think about the successful entrepreneur, especially the young one that I was talking about earlier in this video, who's the college dropout but is on the private jet and blah, 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 you think a few things initially. You think, okay, well, maybe they had a trust fund. Maybe they had rich parents. Maybe they have some skill that I don't have. Maybe they had an advantage that I don't have. Maybe they had, X, Y, and Z circumstances that are contributing to them being able to accomplish this. And I am a living example of someone who did not have those advantages. I did not grow up with rich parents. I did not have a trust fund. I moved out of my parents' house at 15. I struggled with a lot of things that I don't really know if I'm allowed to talk about on YouTube. Whenever I was a teenager, I was very depressed. I was a college dropout. I was $20,000 in debt. I had so many disadvantages working against me, and I was able to make this happen. I have seen that over and over and over and over and over again with the students that I have taught and with the other business owners that I know that are successful. Most of them had difficult life circumstances. And so if you're watching this and your perception of the successful entrepreneur is somebody who's lucky or, had all of those advantages and has discouraged you from starting, I want you to know that there are so many examples like me and my students and other business owners who that was not the case for. And even more importantly than that takeaway, I want you to take away from this that it is actually a lot easier than you think to be able to start your own business, especially an online business. It has never been easier and more accessible to start an online business than it is right now. I have students who sign up for my course and a month later, they have 12 client inquiries of people wanting to work with them. Is it hard work? Yes. Is it logistically hard? Does it have to take a really long time? Do you have to have the perfect circumstances for it to work? Absolutely not. I'm going to show you how it's possible on this YouTube channel. So really excited to dive into topics like time management and how I took that 6-figure business and grew it into a multi-million-dollar business, the lessons I've learned along the way, what I did right, what I did wrong. And I want to give all of that knowledge to you because I want all of you to also be really successful and to also know that there is always a way out when you're feeling hopeless, when you are feeling like, oh my God, I'm so overworked and underpaid and undervalued. So if your goal is to build a very successful online business, or you're a current business owner who wants to become an even better, more successful version of yourself, or you just want to learn some really cool things that will add value to your life, please stick around and subscribe, and I will talk to you later. Bye.